to experience a great opportunity for 4 months of my life by studying in Florence, Italy. Every day was like living in history with all of the historical context that surrounded me. Italy felt like an old place, but also new at the same time, because like all of Europe, it is connected by a high-speed rail system. With the high gas prices and oil prices fluctuating daily, it is virtually impossible to travel anywhere efficiently and cheaply. It's time that the USA fully enter the 21st century like its European and Asian neighbors and implement a high-speed rail system. After riding Europe's system on a weekly basis, I found it to be more comfortable, relaxing, efficient, convenient, and cheaper to take a train than it would have been if I would have been able to take a car myself. It was astounding to be able to travel from one famous city to another within just a few short hours, and at a very economical rate. I want to discuss the benefits on a macro and micro level that an HSR system would have on the U.S. economy and the environment. High-speed rail is not a new concept to the United States. In fact, the idea has been thrown around since the creation of the Department of the Federal Railroad Administration in 1967. The United States has been discussing the idea of a federal high-speed rail service since before Japan ever built its first line and before any European nation had a high-speed rail system. The FRA has designated 13 corridors where the bulk of the U.S. population resides, spanning over 33 states and the District of Columbia. These corridors make up 65% of our nation's population and are expected to absorb even more population growth in future years. The environmental impact that the HSR system would have is directly proportional to the amount of riders on the system. In fact, a single railroad track can carry as many people as a 10-lane highway at a safer and more reliable, efficient way. High-speed trains are 3 times as energy efficient as cars and are 6 times as efficient as planes on a per passenger mile basis. According to the Department of Energy, if we had high-speed rail now, by 2025, it is projected that 112 million trips on high-speed rail systems would have been taken, equivalent to 25 billion passenger miles. This would result in 29 million fewer cars congesting our highways, 500,000 fewer commercial flights, and a reduction of greenhouse emissions by 2.7 million metric tons. Local metro areas' economies would highly benefit from an HSR system due to the amount of traffic rail stations would bring to downtown areas. In fact, urban sprawl would be reduced because businesses would be attracted to the train station in those vicinities. We can all agree that the United States economy is not exactly what it used to be. With the slowly recovering economy from the 2008 recession, a concern on everyone's mind is job security and how services we are used to will be paid for, when our government is already making drastic cuts to many public-funded institutions. Just like the National Highway System of the 60s, an HSR system would require an expensive startup cost, but the benefits and outcomes of a new HSR system far outweigh the initial startup cost. Alfred Chwu is an artist and activist who is in total favor of a U.S. HSR system, and since President Obama's 2009 proposal for high-speed rail has calculated the cost it would take to build all 13 corridors. According to Wu, a rail system would cost $1 to $2 trillion to build. However, this cost would be divided over 4 decades, which is equivalent to $25 to $50 billion a year, or $80 to $160 a year per person. Jobs would be created on a national level. According to the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act of 2009, funding in a rail infrastructure would serve as a catalyst for growth in regional economic productivity and expansion by stimulating domestic manufacturing, promoting local tourism, and driving commercial and residential developments. In fact, over 30 rail manufacturers, both domestic and foreign, have agreed to establish or expand their base operations in the United States if hired to build America's next generation of high-speed rail lines, a commitment ensured by the FRA. The Act guaranteed an initial 320,000 jobs nationally, with the government's initial $8 billion investment, with an overall $13 billion economic benefit. Benefits include construction and operation jobs, as well as manufacturing and supply chain opportunities. The stimulus would also increase commercial and residential properties. According to the Environmental Law and Policy Center, family residences located near commuter rail stations in St. Louis already command a 32% premium over other homes elsewhere, along with commercial land located within 1,300 feet of VTA light rails in California already accounts for a 120% increase in premium. Overall, increased land values also generate more property tax revenue to fund public services and balance local budgets. Now I want to discuss the benefits on a micro scale. specifically Ohio, and what would have been the economic benefits we would be experiencing now if it would have passed. According to the Ohio Public Interest Research Group, OPRIG, rail is part of the solution, boosting our economy and creating jobs, modernizing our transportation system, and helping solve our nation's oil dependency. If construction would have began, over 15,200 construction jobs would have been created, spanning 10 years, with an end result of 57,000 permanent jobs. An overall economic benefit of $3 billion in the region, especially near stations. It would reduce traffic on Ohio's highways by 320,000 vehicle miles per year and save up to 15,000 gallons of gas per day. Also, it would have put over half of all Ohioans within 15 miles of a train station, along with 59% of Ohio State workforce within a 15-mile distance. However, John Kasich believed turning down $400 million of free money was beneficial because he felt it was not a good business plan. Although not in Ohio, there is still hope that a national rail system will eventually be built. It is now estimated from a 2010 national poll that found twice as many Americans are in favor of high-speed rail, with only 26% of those surveyed claiming they would not use a rail system. Also, because California is the only state out of 33 to take stimulus money to build an HSR system, only time will tell. But it being one of the most highly populated corridors in the nation, I believe it is bound to work. I do believe and have optimism that one day we will fund a mass HSR system and again be just as competitive as our global neighbors. The benefits are far too great to not invest in this type of infrastructure, both economically and environmentally. If you believe this high-speed rail is the boost this country needs to stimulate the economy and make an environmental impact, then I highly urge you to become an activist for the cause. I hope one day I can feel as if I am in Europe, when in all actuality I'm in Cleveland, Ohio, or any other major U.S. metropolitan area.